Hello and a very good evening. You're watching the news tonight on Rajya Sabha television with me, Frank Pereira. Here are the headlines. Violence sweeps Haryana, Punjab and neighbouring states after High Court convicts Dera Sacha Sauda Chief Gurmeet Singh in a rape case. 28 people killed and 100 injured as supporters vandalised railway stations and government property. BJP Chief Amit Shah and Union Minister Smriti Irani sworn in as members of the Rajya Sabha. Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu administers oath to them in his chamber. De facto head of South Korean conglomerate Samsung J. Lee jailed for 5 years, charged with bribery. Lee is the prime accused in an insider trading scandal that led to impeachment of South Korea's former president Park Geun-hye. And ousted Thai Prime Minister Yingluck flees the country ahead of the verdict against her in a negligence trial over a rice subsidy scheme. Nation's Supreme Court issues arrest warrant. Well, our top story on the bulletin this evening comes from Punjab and Haryana. Within few hours of being convicted in a rape case, Dera Sacha Sauda Chief Gurmeet Singh's followers ransacked, vandalized and have set on fire dozens of public buildings. News agency PTI reported that 28 people have been killed and more than 200 injured as violence spiraled out of control. Rail stations were set on fire in Punjab, while government offices were vandalized in both states. There are reports of media personnel being injured. Home Minister Rajnath Singh spoke to the Chief Ministers of Punjab and Haryana and also convened a high-level meet. Haryana Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar is set to visit Panchkula. The Punjab and Haryana court has ordered authorities to seize all properties of Gurmeet Singh and compensate for the destruction. President Ramnath Kovind has condemned the violence and appealed to citizens to maintain peace. Prime Minister Modi has also urged officials to work round the clock to restore normalcy and to provide all possible assistance. This is the second time that violent mobs brought Haryana to a halt after the Jat agitation last year. Here's a look at what took place earlier today.
Self-declared godman Gurmeet Ram Rahim Singh arriving in court in a 200-car motorcade. Just minutes after reaching the special CBI court in Panchkula, the Dera Sacha Sauda head was convicted for raping 2 women followers in 2002. The quantum of sentence will be announced on the 28th of August. Till then, Ram Rahim will remain in the Ambala jail. But just as anticipated, the media was first attacked by the hundreds of followers who had gathered outside the court. Large clashes, arson and violence then started spreading in Panchkula town of Haryana, where more than 1 lakh of Ram Rahim supporters congregated 2 days before the verdict. As Dera supporters clash with security personnel in Panchkula, a petrol pump was set on fire and curfew has been imposed in Panchkula, Mansa and Sirsa. The Punjab and Haryana High Court has authorized security forces to use force if needed to control the agitated supporters. Apprehending violence in Punjab too, Chief Minister Amrinder Singh appealed for peace.
सारे अपने माहौल ਨੂੰ ठीक रखन, शांति ਇੱਥੇ बरकरार रखिए। ਸਾਡੀ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਫੋਰਸਸ ਸਾਰੀਆਂ ਇੱਥੇ ਛਾਈਆਂ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਪੰਜਾਬ ਪੁਲਿਸ, ਸੈਂਟਰਲ ਸਿਕਿਉਰਿਟੀ ਫੋਰਸਸ, ਫੌਜ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੈ ਅਗਰ ਲੋੜ ਪਵੇ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਜੀ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨਹੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਔਰ ਇਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਇਹ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਂਤੀ ਰਵੇ ਔਰ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੋਈ ਖੂਨ ਖਰਾਬਾ ਨਾ ਹੋਏ ਔਰ ਮੇਰੀ ਅੱਜ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਰਕਰਾਰ ਰੱਖੋ।
कानून से कोई भी व्यक्ति ऊपर नहीं है और इस प्रकार कानून को अपने हाथ में लेने वाले व्यक्तियों के खिलाफ अवश्य कार्रवाई की जाएगी। मैं सभी लोगों से अपील करता हूं कि इस प्रकार की अफवाहों में ना आए, किसी भी अपराधी वृत्ति के लोगों से बचें, उनसे सावधान रहें। ये मेरी आप सब लोगों से अपील है।
Alert has been sounded in adjoining districts of Punjab to ensure there is no spillover of trouble. Security has been stepped up in western Uttar Pradesh, Jammu, Rajasthan and Delhi as well. With mobile internet services already shut indefinitely in Haryana, several trains that travel through Punjab and Haryana have also been cancelled. As a precautionary step, government offices, schools and colleges will remain shut. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, India has promised to revamp the infrastructure and mechanism of Nepal to hasten its development process. It's day 2 of Nepal's Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deoba's 5-day visit to India. The visit aims at safeguarding the unique relationship between the two countries in the face of negative tactics of China.
India and Nepal will work together for the development of the Himalayan nation. Nepal has also learned from recent Indian experiences how to overcome global challenges for its economy. With this in view, Nepal's National Planning Commission and India's Niti Aayog are formulating a new strategy of economic and social development.
From our side, Niti Aayog, and from the Nepali side, the National Planning Commission agreed on a policy dialogue where we would learn from each other's experiences. That we felt was a very useful step.
Petroleum and gas have been a huge challenge for Nepal. The crisis was at its peak when the Madheshi movement stopped their supply. It also crystallized anger among the Nepalese public against India, even though much of the supply problem was indigenous. To avoid such incidents, India has taken on itself the pipeline supply of these products.
Looking at the construction of an LPG pipeline from Motihari to Amlekhganj, a natural gas pipeline from Gorakhpur to Sunwal, and extending the Amlekhganj pipeline to Chitwan, which is further west in Nepal.
India has also assured Nepal that it will improve the spread of the rail network inside its territory and also the lines that connect it to India. It also assured that roads within Nepal will be repaired and expanded.
We have had this Terai Road project underway for some time. That has made progress in the last year, certainly since the last visit of the last Nepali Prime Minister. We have now awarded contracts for 12 packages dealing with 9 roads covering roughly about 240 kilometers.
In a recent visit to Nepal in connection with BIMSTEC meeting, External Affairs Minister Sushma Swaraj asked Nepal to give its priority according to the projects that could be started. In recent times, India-Nepal relations took a hit mainly due to the Madheshi movement. The Chinese influence on Nepal also added fuel to the fire. But given that many Nepalese and Indians have an intimate connect with one another, the strain in mutual relationship is counterproductive for both. Akhilesh Suman's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
The Prime Minister Narendra Modi wants IAS officers to not just restrict themselves to files but also go to the field to understand the true impact of decision making. He conveyed this message to a group of senior bureaucrats he met on Thursday. Modi told them that as officers they should not look on their work just as a duty but as an opportunity to make a positive transformation for governance in the country. Details of the meeting were shared in a release by the PMO on Friday. The Prime Minister also urged IAS officers to use technology interventions to simplify the governance processes. He asked them to focus their attention on 100 most backward districts of India so that they can be brought up to the national average level on various development parameters. The officers also shared their experiences with the Prime Minister on various subjects such as performance-based administration, innovation in governance, waste management, climate change, education and skill development. Crisp yellow 200 rupee notes debuted in India on Friday. The RBI has maintained that the notes will act as a missing link and make it easier for people to transact in lower denomination currency. Here are the details.
A long queue outside the Reserve Bank of India, reminiscent of the frantic rush for cash after the sudden demonetization in November last year. But on Friday, the lines were for a different reason. The newly minted 200 rupee notes. Rajesh was one among many who woke up before 5 a.m. and queued up by 6 a.m. to obtain the new 200 rupee currency notes introduced for the first time in India's history.
जैसा मैंने कल सुना कि 500 का 200 का नोट जो भारत में रिलीज होने वाला है आरबीआई के माध्यम से, तो उस नोट को पाने के लिए मेरे मन में काफ़ी उत्सुकता थी कि इस नोट को मैं प्राप्त करके जल्दी अपने लोगों को दिखाऊंगा और खुशी का इजहार करूंगा। तो मैं सुबह 5 बजे नींद से जागा और नहा धोकर फ्रेश होकर मैं यहाँ पर सुबह 6 बजे आरबीआई ऑफिस मेट्रो के माध्यम से आ गया।
The 200 rupee notes have a motif of the Sachi Stupa monument depicting India's cultural heritage, besides the Ashoka pillar emblem. There's a security thread with inscriptions Bharat and RBI. The color of the thread changes from green to blue when the note is tilted. For the visually impaired, the Mahatma Gandhi portrait and Ashoka pillar emblem are raised. The new notes also have a logo of Swachh Bharat.
We know that our friendly neighbors are running factories to reproduce fake currency notes which are entering India through Bangladesh. That is what is being reported. Now, we have to have constant change in the currency notes, their design, their denomination, their styles, and changing the security features to minimize the occurrence of fake currency.
Just as it was with the 2000 rupee notes, ATM machines will now have to be reconfigured to dispense the new 200 rupee currency notes. This is the fourth new note to be introduced since Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced an overnight ban on 1000 and 500 rupee notes to check black money. The 200 rupee notes are expected to inject more low denomination currency in the system and ease the pressure on the 500 and 100 rupee notes. Kriti Mishra's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, BJP President Amit Shah and Union Minister Smriti Irani today took oath as Rajya Sabha members. Rajya Sabha Chairman M. Venkaiah Naidu administered the oath to both Shah and Irani in his chamber in Parliament House. While the BJP chief, who is making his debut in Parliament, took the oath in Hindi, Smriti Irani, who has been re-elected from Gujarat, took oath in Sanskrit. Parliamentary Affairs Minister Anant Kumar, Finance Minister Arun Jaitley, Law Minister Ravi Shankar Prasad and many senior leaders of the BJP were also present on the occasion.
Aham vidhina sthapitam bharatasya samvidhanam prati satyam shraddham nishtham cha.
Well, a day after passing the landmark verdict on right to privacy, the Supreme Court has said that the judgment will have some bearing in matters related to possession of beef in Maharashtra. The Apex Court made the observation while hearing appeals filed against the Bombay High Court judgment of the 6th of May 2016 that decriminalized possession of beef in case of animals slaughtered outside the state. The bench, comprising Justices A.K. Sikri and Ashok Bhushan, was informed that Thursday's judgment declaring right to privacy a fundamental right was important for adjudication of the appeal. After which the bench said that the judgment will have some bearing in these matters and posted the matter for hearing after 2 weeks. The Maharashtra government moved the Apex Court on August 10th, challenging the High Court's verdict. Well, here's a roundup of some other national news in nationwide. The Supreme Court today agreed to hear petitions challenging Article 35A relating to special rights and privileges of permanent residents of Jammu and Kashmir after Diwali. The Apex Court was hearing a petition filed by Charu Ali Khanna challenging Article 35A and Section 6 of the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution that deal with permanent residents of the state. The Delhi High Court wrapped Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal in a defamation case filed by Union Finance and Defence Minister Arun Jaitley. Kejriwal questioned the decision of a single judge to expedite the hearing in the defamation suit. The High Court has reserved the order on Kejriwal's plea against the decision of a single judge to speed up hearing in the defamation suit. The Delhi High Court today sought the Election Commission's response on the petition of 12 AAP MLAs on a complaint against them for allegedly holding office of profit. Justice Indermeet Kaur issued a notice to the Election Commission and sought its reply on the petitions, contending that after the High Court ruled that their appointments were unconstitutional and set them aside, there was no need for the poll panel to continue hearing the matter. Four coaches of a suburban train derailed near Mahim station on the harbour line today morning, injuring 5 passengers. Railway officials said that the derailment affected train movement on the Wadala-Andheri section. Also, the local train, which started from Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj terminus, was on its way to Andheri station when a problem was detected in the overhead equipment near Mahim station. Well, it's time for a short break now, but news and updates will continue on the other side. Stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Typically, gold is very soft. To make the gold stronger, they add copper to it. And as a result, 24 karat gold becomes 22 karat, 20 karat, and so on and so forth. And in the process, they are making it stronger, but at the same time, the purity of the gold is gone. So we now developed one of my students by name Vinod, who is a faculty in SRM University. He took this up and we tried to develop these so-called grain refiners for gold, and then added these grain refiners to gold and demonstrate that a 24 karat gold can be as strong as 20 karat gold without adding copper to it.
Watch Eureka with Professor B.S. Murthy, Head Department of Metallurgical and Materials Engineering, IIT Madras, Chennai, only on Rajya Sabha TV.
St. Thomas Basilica, one of the world's 3 churches that is built over the Tomb of Apostles. St. Thomas was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ who brought Christianity to India. With an underground tomb where the remains of St. Thomas are laid, this magnificent basilica is of Gothic architecture. The stained glass of the church depicts some divine moments of St. Thomas's life. In 2006, this church was conferred with the status of National Shrine. Welcome back. You're watching Rajya Sabha Television. Well, the billionaire heir to Samsung's business empire, Jay Lee, has been jailed for 5 years for bribery. Lee, the vice chairman of Samsung Electronics and de facto head of the South Korean conglomerate, was charged with bribery, corruption, hiding assets overseas, concealing criminal proceeds and giving false testimony. He is regarded as a key person in a scandal of insider trading leading to the impeachment of South Korea's former president Park Geun-hye. 4 other executives of Samsung were also charged along with Lee. The prosecutor said Lee gave or pledged to give donations worth $38.4 million to Park's confidant Choi Soon-sil. The money was to win the government support for a merger case of Samsung that would empower Lee to gain de facto control over the conglomerate. The defense had denied the charges. Large numbers of opponents and supporters of Lee rallied in front of the court with banners. Shares of Samsung Electronics dropped more than 1%, and other group companies including Samsung C&T and Samsung SDS also turned lower after the verdict. Well, staying on with international news now, the Supreme Court of Thailand issued an arrest warrant for former Prime Minister Yingluck on Friday after she failed to appear for the verdict in a trial over a rice subsidy scheme. Her lawyers told the court that she was unable to attend as she was ill, but sources in her party said that she fled the country just hours before the verdict.
Ousted Thai Prime Minister Yingluck fled the country on Friday ahead of a verdict against her in a negligence trial over a rice subsidy scheme. As she failed to show up at the court, the nation's Supreme Court postponed the verdict to 27th of September, issuing an arrest warrant against her. Her lawyers, however, told the court that Yingluck was unwell, due to which she could not attend the hearing.
อาการน้ำหนูไม่เท่ากันเกิดขึ้นเมื่อคืนหรือว่าช่วงเช้าค่ะไม่ทราบฮะผมสั้นๆผมมีแค่ข้อมูลแค่นี้แล้วขณะนี้คุณยิ่งนักอยู่โรงพยาบาลหรือว่าไม่ทราบครับยังอยู่ในประเทศไทยไหมคะยังอยู่ในประเทศไทยไหมคะไม่ทราบครับ
Hundreds of Yingluck supporters gathered outside the court on Friday, eager to meet the former Prime Minister amid tightened security.
แล้วเรายังเชื่อว่าท่านนายกยิ่งลักษณ์ได้ทำเพื่อประชาชนชาวนาจริงๆเราก็หวังนะครับว่าความยุติธรรมนี้จะมีแก่ท่านพวกเรามาให้กำลังใจครับ
Thai Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha ordered security bodies to search for Yingluck.
ผมก็ได้แต่เพียงว่ากำชับฝ่ายมั่นคงให้ดูให้ดีว่าเขาป่วยจริงหรือเปล่าเขาอยู่ที่ไหน นะการทับเส้นทางเข้าออกทั้งช่องทางอะไรช่องทางปกติ
Yingluck is accused of negligence in her handling of a multi-billion-dollar rice subsidy scheme under which the government bought rice from farmers at inflated prices. If found guilty, Thailand's first female Prime Minister could face a jail term of up to 10 years. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
In more international news now, at least 2 people were killed and 8 others injured when gunmen stormed a Shiite mosque in the Afghan capital of Kabul on Friday. The attack began at 1:20 p.m. local time when an assailant detonated explosives at the gate of the Imam Zama mosque. 3 gunmen then entered the mosque and fired on security forces. Special forces units were on the scene attempting to neutralize the attackers. Interior Ministry officials said security forces killed 2 assailants and that the situation was still ongoing. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but Islamic State militants have attacked Shiite Muslim targets in Afghanistan in the past. Well, in a second major boat accident in Brazil on Friday, at least 22 people were dead after a ferry capsized in the country's coastal state of Bahia. The ferry was carrying around 130 passengers. The governor has declared 3 days of mourning in response to the tragedy.
At least 22 people were killed after a ferry sank off the northeastern Brazilian city of Salvador. The latest tragedy happened in the Bay of Mar Grande near Veracruz in the northeast of the country. About 90 people were reportedly pulled alive from the sea by rescue teams and private boats. The ferry was carrying roughly 130 passengers and was on a short route from an island in Bahia state which is popular with tourists. Survivors said the ferry capsized when it was hit by a powerful wave.
Só tomando chuva do lado direito, né, de quem está vindo, veio mais para a esquerda, juntou tudo, aí pesou e virou. Aí virou, pronto, aí foi aquele Deus nos acuda.
The governor of Bahia declared 3 days of mourning in response to the tragedy. Investigation is on as the cause of the sinking remains unknown.
O barco é vistoriado pela Marinha, a documentação está em dia. Todas as 8 lanchas que aqui operam estão com a documentação em dia.
A esfera penal, ele incorre num crime de ter colocado em risco, né, a vida dessas pessoas dentro de uma embarcação.
This is the second major boat accident in Brazil this week. A ferry sank on Tuesday on the Yingluck River, killing at least 19 people. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha Television.
Here's a roundup of some other news from across the globe in Global Buzz. United States President Donald Trump today told Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi that he was keen to overcome any obstacles in the way of cooperation. This comes just days after the US said it will withhold financial aid to Egypt. Recently, 2 US sources familiar with the matter told that Washington had decided to deny Egypt $95.7 million in aid and to delay a further $195 million because it failed to make progress on respecting human rights. US gasoline prices surged to a 3-week high as Hurricane Harvey moved across the Gulf of Mexico and threatened to strike the heart of the country's oil refining industry when it comes ashore in Texas this weekend. Communities in the path of the quickly strengthening storm began evacuating and energy firms shut refineries and offshore oil and gas platforms. At least 34 Syrian soldiers and allied fighters were killed in an ISIS counterattack in the east of Raqqa province. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that the militant group recaptured large swathes of territory from government forces in the fighting. Now, Syria's army is seeking to advance through Raqqa province to reach neighboring Deir ez-Zor, where militants have government forces and civilians in the provincial capital since 2015. Iraqi forces made further gains in their offensive to dislodge Islamic State from Tal Afar, seizing 5 more villages on the eastern and southern outskirts of the city. In the 5th day of their onslaught, Iraqi forces continued to encircle jihadists holding out in the city in far northwestern Iraq, close to the Syrian border. whereas Talafar has produced some of ISIS's most senior commanders and was cut off from the rest of the IS-held territory in June itself. Well, moving on to some sports news now, where PV Sindhu completed a hat-trick of medals in the World Badminton Championship as she stormed into the semi-finals, lifting India's spirits after Kidambi Shrikant's quarter-final exit in Glasgow. Sindhu, a silver medalist at the Rio Olympics, assured herself at least a bronze after defeating world number 6 Chinese Sun Yu. Sindhu disposed of Sun Yu 21-14, 21-9 in 39 minutes at the Emirates Arena. She will next take on another Chinese contender. Earlier, Kidambi Shrikant crashed out of the championship in the quarterfinals as he was completely outplayed by the world number 1 Son Wan Ho of South Korea. Well, that's it on this newscast. Good night.